Do you like money?
Money, money, money.
Do you like green numbers? Have you ever wondered, why am I so broke all the time trying to run a farm? Do you need more income for your income? Yo, dog, I heard you like income. Let's talk about it. In this video, we'll go over what it really takes to find a profitable crop and how to use a profitable crop to your greatest advantage. When it comes to crops, there are many different options within the game, many different production options, and a lot of different ways to come to those options. The equipment that you use, as well as the equipment you don't use, really play a big part in your profitability overall. While we won't be going over what a profitable farm requires in this video, we will at least take a look at what the crops themselves will entail. So here we're looking at the sell prices for all of our products and crops in the game. At the top, we'll find the raw products that we can farm and directly pull out of the ground and send to a seller. Anyone who buys these are really going to be paying kind of bottom dollar, but one thing we will notice is that items that have a larger yields will have smaller prices, and those that have smaller yields will have very large prices. When it comes to choosing a crop, choosing a baseline crop like this is more or less just to get you started. Things like soybeans that have no product but also offer a very large production value for a very small production price. In other words, we don't require as much to move this because it requires less space in a trailer. We don't require as much equipment to create this because we don't need as large of equipment. And additionally, we don't need as large of tractors because that equipment is also smaller. So soybeans is a great idea to get started, but what about other things like products? If we move down the list here, we will actually find that other products like we have chickens, we have sheep that's going to make wool, we have cows that make milk, and those are kind of second level because we have to put something into them to get out of it. That's actually where we're going to go into my system that I like to work with, which is a tier system. The tier system identifies that raw product is tier 0. Anything that you have to create by putting something into, such as putting grain into chickens to create eggs, that is a tier 2 product, or rather a tier 0 animal product. But we will still consider that a tier 1 product right there. Same idea. As we move down, we're actually going to go into flour and then bread. And this is actually an excellent example of what I'm about to get into. Flour can be created by a multitude of ways. That can actually be created by wheat, barley, oat, and sorghum. By creating flour out of all four, we can actually see a much greater creation of flour because it actually creates much faster. We'll get into production in just a moment. That's just an example of what we're getting into. And then when we have going from our tier 1 flour into our tier 2 bread, that can go into even greater profits because as we increase our production yield through our tiers, the price of each yield will go up normally. There are some products that are a little bit strange in how they work. For example, cereal is actually a terrible item to create because even at its greatest sell point, we're actually going to go right in here, its greatest sell point is almost $5,000 per pallet, but it actually loses money. You're probably sitting there thinking, how is that possible? It's actually something that you create, you have to buy a production for. Surely Giants balance that, correct? Not exactly. When this was balanced to begin with, this was created for production to be its primary sell point for the game. And yes, you can make money. You can make a lot of money making cereal. The problem with cereal, and again, we'll get into production in just a moment. The problem with something like cereal is that it actually loses money over just selling the components that go into it. So once you put all the components into cereal and you spent all that time and money producing it, you actually could have made more money just selling the raw product. But that's why we're actually getting into this video, because not everything is the greatest way to make money. Everything is viable. Don't let anyone ever tell you you can't play the game the way you want to play the game. Even I will not tell you this is absolutely God's word. You cannot take me at my face value. I am creating this video to show you better ways to make money but I will never tell you how to play the game. Let's get a little bit further into production. All right, so what we're looking at here are production chains. You've probably seen this before yourself, and maybe it's a little bit overwhelming. There are a lot of different things you can produce. We're actually not going to go over the biogas plant. We're not going to go over the carpentry too much. I'll gloss over it. The same thing with the sawmill. But what we're looking at primarily are the items that we can actually farm. So at the top here, we're looking at the sugar mill and the tailor shop. Now, the reason those show up first is because I actually had to place them myself on this map. Elm Creek does not have a sugar mill or a tailor shop. There are some mod maps, like the FS22 map, very good map, highly recommended, that do have these items on the map by default. But as far as I know, there's no Giants map that actually has these on the map by default, the tailor shop or the sugar mill, which is a little bit of a shame because these actually are very good ways to make money. The sugar mill, you can turn sugar beet and sugar cane into sugar, and in fact, the sugar beet cut sugar. The sugar beet, cut sugar beet right here, converts into sugar. It actually goes a little bit better because you can actually turn the same sugar beets you have into the same volume of cut sugar beet. So this actually works a little bit better in your favor if you have a way to cut the sugar beets en masse, or if you even have just a way to cut them at all. Really, this is a much better way to do it. But that aside, when we're talking about the tailor shop, this is actually the most profitable item in the game. Now, when I say the most profitable, what I actually mean by that is, I lost my place. Here we go. We're going to go over here. We're going to go up to close. Where is it? And I've lost my place. There it is. 18,500. And this is on normal. This is not on easy. This is on normal. 18,500 per pallet of clothes. I will tell you that this will be an annual sell. This sells in May on Elm Creek. I believe there's a map out there. I want to say it might have been Hellblaron that sold on December. But point is, whatever your highest month is, that's the month you want to sell, and that's actually going to remain true for all of these. So when we're actually producing in order to stock up and sell on the month that we're going to have our high sell value. Same thing with sugar in July, or maybe even September doesn't look half bad. Even August it goes down a little bit, but it's not bad. It's only going to make a few dollars difference, so that's still going to be a very nice sell period right there for sugar, and especially with sugar, it's at its volume that it creates. That's actually going to be really beneficial for you. You're going to be able to sell for 3 months. That's excellent. And that means that you could be producing from July all the way back to July, but you don't have to sell all of it in July. You might have so much that you can't physically get it there fast enough. That's perfect because that means you have 3 months to get rid of it. You can be producing all the way through, still be selling, and then not have to worry about selling again. Once you get to October, you can not have to worry about selling again until July again. So that's a really good option. But that's actually what we want to aim for, is every single product has a month somewhere where it sells really, really well. That's our target. Is we want to try to aim for that month when we sell. So everything we generate with that product, and this is actually step one, is figuring out what product you want to make. So once we identify what product we're looking to make, then we have to go and look at when it sells really well. Once we identify when it sells really well, then we kind of have to go and look for the product itself, what it comes from. So we have olive oil here. If we go up and we look at olives, olives are actually a little bit strange because they are a different type of crop that you have to do a lot of maintenance for yourself. So I'm not a huge fan of these, but still, anything you want to do is great. You just have to do your research first if you really want to make money at it. So if we notice, the top selling for olives is in June, bottom selling is in November. And I believe that's actually because olives are harvested in October. So October, November is when the market's going to be flooded with them. The prices are going to be very good because there's just so much supply and not a lot of demand. But then as the supply kind of starts being sold off, the price starts going back up a little bit. And then it starts flying up as we get into June, because this is when supply is going to be at its lowest and demand is going to be at its highest. Whereas demand is probably going to start going down in July because there's probably a lot of people selling in June, and that's going to make demand go back down and supply go back up. So, and until that cycle starts over again. So once we have all of our product, we're going to be selling in June just like everyone else. That's really smart because we want to make a lot of money on it. So once we have our olives, if we actually look, 1301 for 1,000 liters of olives, whereas in the olive oil, over $5,000 for 1,000 liters. Now let's go do our research. In order to produce olive oil, what do we require? And we're actually going to go to the oil mill. It requires 2 to 1. So it only takes 2,000 liters of olives to make your $5,200. So 3,600 to 5,200. That's a big jump for how much you're making over your base price. Now, of course, we do have to consider your production costs, but usually they're so small that it doesn't really make too much difference. But it is still something worth considering. So $60 per month, if we consider that it's going to be producing for the whole year, because we want to guarantee that it's producing the whole year, then we're actually going to be multiplying 60 by 12, and that comes out to 720. So 720 extra dollars. If we only produce 1,000 liters of oil, then that's just going to eat into our profits very directly. So we're talking about 3,600 plus 720. That comes out to just over, or just about 4,300. So only making an additional $1,000, but we're still making profit. Now that being said, you will make a lot more than just 1,000 liters if you're producing for the whole year. Now let's go back and we'll talk about something else to consider. And the other thing to consider here is we sell in June and we are actually harvesting in October. So that means that when we have our product in hand in October, we're only able to produce for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months total. 7 months if you want to consider it, but we'll say 8 months just to be a little bit easier. You have 8 months to produce all of your product from whatever your yield is, in order to be able to sell in June what you harvested in October. So if we're talking about 8 months, that means that 60 times 8, that's 420. So your production costs are a little bit lower, but you have to produce faster. That being the case, once we start talking about production costs versus what you're producing, it's better to leave production costs at the door. It's a little bit easier to think about. You can basically assume that if there is a production and it's going to produce what you're looking for, the production costs are more or less just your entry into the door. They're always going to be much less than what you're actually making, but if you want to consider them, that's the way to consider them. Take the amount of time it takes for your harvest to be taken out of the ground and put into the factory, and then once you get to your peak selling month, that's your cutoff. So if you're harvesting in October and selling in June, just like we were just talking, that's 8 months you have to produce. So once you take your production cost per month, multiply that by however many months it is from your harvest to your sell point, and that's what your production costs are going to be. Again, usually that is going to be completely eclipsed by whatever you're producing, because the improvement over what you're producing versus what you're putting in is going to directly eat that up. But it will still eat into your profits if you want to think about it. If you're producing not very much or you have a small farm, it is something absolutely to consider. Once we get into tier 2 production, that's when it starts really mattering, especially with like things like bread and clothes, like I just had selected right here. That's when it's going to start mattering, because that's when you're having to compound not only your bread but your production costs for flour, and each one of these is the same production cost per month, so it kind of helps out. And because we're talking about a lot of cycles per month for what we're actually creating, the way to identify how many you're going to make in a month is you take your cycles per month, multiply it by however many liters are coming out. So 120 times 120, that's exactly how many. I think that's 14,400 is how many that's going to come out to. So every month you're going to be able to produce about 14,500 liters of flour from your wheat alone. Now, because of that, the grain mill can accept all of these all at once and it'll just make all of them completely parallel. It will not stop. It will just make its wheat, its barley, its oat, its sorghum. It doesn't have to wait for each one in a line. That's an excellent tip for making money very quickly and having your turnaround come around quickly. And the reason that I bring that up is that both of these tier twos right here, especially if you notice, they have a tiny cycle count. So even if if you can go to bread, you're only making 2,000 liters of bread every month. So even if you are cramming the bakery, absolutely stuffing it full of just every ounce of flour you can get, you're still only going to make 2,000 liters of bread a month. And because of that, bread is probably one of those things, and clothes as well, are one of those things that when you get into this tier, I recommend building up your production facility and building up your production throughput to expect that bread will just be sold every 12 months, but you're constantly producing it regardless. So don't expect to be selling bread just as it is. Expect to sell bread and sell clothes like once a year. Just go to your production facility, pick up what you have, sell it, but just keep producing. You're not actually guaranteeing that everything's going to be there 100%. So if you can, that's wonderful. In fact, that is the greatest way you can do it. So we're just going to talk about bread here for just a moment. When we talk about bread, it becomes a little bit different of a situation. So we have wheat that gets harvested. I believe that one's in June. No, I'm sorry. Barley is in June. Wheat is in July. So is oat, and then sorghum is down here in August. That was a little bit late, but when you're talking about producing all four of them at the same time and they're all producing flour, then it doesn't really make too much of a difference. We can just kind of take August as our worst case scenario, I should say. Our best case scenario would be barley. So as long as it's producing all four of these all the time, then the grain mill is going to be at its maximum efficiency. But when we're talking about making it into bread, because it makes it so slowly and we can't really speed that up without placing more bakeries, you do have to remember that if you want this to be faster in the base game, you have to place more bakeries, which you absolutely can. But we'll get into that again in a moment. I'm sure you see my upgrade button down here, and that's actually what I'm talking about. There is a mod that I want to get into that makes this a lot more tolerable, and it's a very balanced mod. Absolutely love it. But we'll get into it in a minute. When we start talking about bread, bread does make very slowly. So even if we're just pumping this thing absolutely full of flour all the time, and we're able to get our production quota out of our flour as quickly as possible. So wheat is it was in June. No, I'm sorry, it was in July. So it stays really low July, August because wheat is going to just be absolutely tanked in price in these months. And once again, over here in January is when it gets to its peak price. And so we would be able to sell our wheat in January, but it sells very low. Sells very, very low. And then we go down here and we look at our flour. Same situation. It sells in January for a little bit more. So, and when we talk about wheat, it was a 1-to-1 ratio. It was what, 120 to 120, or was it wheat this? Oh, I'm sorry, I may have spoken incorrectly. Okay, so wheat is 15 to 12. So that one's going to be kind of like a 5 to 4 ratio is what that's going to be. So you assume that 1,000 wheat is going to turn into 800 flour. So that's a little bit worse, but that still actually makes money if you run out the numbers. 1,200 versus like 750 if you want to think of it that way. Always go a little bit lower from the max when you're expecting, because this max is not going to be guaranteed, especially in normal and hard. Whereas in easy, as soon as you hit that month, you're probably going to be seeing the max number or even greater than that. But in normal and hard, you're probably going to have to like really wait out the hours of that month before you see that number actually tick over. So you're still making a little bit of money. If you were just making pure flour out of pure wheat, you're still going to make a little bit of money in January. But when it comes to bread, bread sells a lot higher. And it does also sell in January because it follows that same kind of cycle for grains And if we actually go up to barley, we're probably going to see the same. Yeah, we're going to see exactly the same kind of situation. If tanks out, comes all the way back up in January. Oat tanks out, comes all the way back up in January. So all the grains, all the cereals here that are going to go into bread are going to come out the same. And bread itself is also going to come out the same. But bread, um, if you're talking about pure wheat, we're talking about a 5 to 4, and then that 4 is going to be turning into a 2 to 1. So you can expect that for every 1,000 liters of wheat we put in, we're going to be getting out 200 liters of, I'm sorry, 400 liters. I misspoke. You're going to expect to get 400 liters of bread out of every 1,000 liters of wheat that we put in. And of course, again, if we put in more than just wheat, we're putting in wheat, barley, oat, and sorghum, that will always make the grain mill go faster. But we actually can point out that when it comes to wheat and barley, they do go down in volume, but oat and sorghum actually go up in volume a little bit. Now, sorghum, you might as well just expect that it's going to be the same unless you're making an absolutely crazy amount like I do. Uh, and then oat, I love oat. Oat is one of my favorite grains to plant for bread because it just goes up in volume so nicely. Um, it's not a very easy calculation to make. It's the best way to do it is just multiply this by 10, and you can get an extra 10. It'll be a little bit easier to look at. But when we're making our bread, everything going into it all at once, you're gonna have a lot of extra flour because all that flour gets made so quickly at the grain mill, especially when you're just using a little bit of each grain coming from 4 different fields put into the grain mill, and that grain mill is going to chew through it super, super fast. And then when you come out with your bread, that's going to go really, really slow. So the way that you would want to do it again is instead of trying to make this in your time frame, make it instead to be produced year round. And then you're just going to sell it when it's time to sell it. So that was in January. You come up December and you'll say, okay, this is the last flour I'm putting in. I'm going to go back in January and I'm going to go pick up my bread and sell it. And you're going to make a nice, wonderful, tidy profit when you do that. Now, the only problem with that, and I will say this, is you have to plan for it. If you're planning to sell just as soon as everything's done, I'm going to take everything, all I've got, all the way over to the store, you're going to be losing out on a ton of money. And that's really going to be the Achilles heel of this, is if you're not planning for that long game where we're coming back in January instead of selling whenever the hell we have it. Planning for January can sometimes really chew on those red numbers. And believe me, I've been there. And you'll see that red number come up in your nice little budget here, like we see this red number because I purchased all the production plants on this test map here. These red numbers, they hate me. They hate everybody. They hate you. They hate me. They hate your mother, your brother, your father. They hate everybody, and they don't care what you think about them. So sometimes when you see these red numbers, you really have to just calm down, not panic, know that in the future, that green number is going to help you change that. And that's what this long game is all about, is choosing a crop that's going to give you the long game that really makes sense. So if we're talking about these raw products here, they have like these tiny, tiny little numbers. And then when we get down into flour, we're talking about this better number, but we're not talking about a much, much better number. We're talking about making profit. And I do love selling flour by itself. It's a great idea because when you have just a grain mill and you're able to just crank through that grain as quick as possible and then sell the flour straight to the supermarket, wonderful gameplay loop. Highly recommend it. Once you get into bread, you got to play the long game. You have to really plan ahead and really understand what it is you're getting into and how long it's going to be between your your annual income. You're only going to see a green number once a year, but it's going to be a really, really nice green number. So now let's talk about scalability for just a moment. When we're talking about large fields such as those behind me right now, you need lots and lots of space and lots of arable land in order to create large amounts of grains, root crops, potatoes, things like that. When it comes to things like production, such as greenhouses, you need more. Just more. Now, you could just be a madman and go place down a dozen greenhouses all in a nice neat row. For these greenhouses will produce 4 times as much as one greenhouse. But what if there was another way? So, what if instead of having 4 individual greenhouses, what if I had the ability to make one greenhouse or one bakery or one oil mill or one grain mill work like 4 of them? That's actually what this mod that I actually teased about earlier does. If we go in here and we go into this large greenhouse that's down here, it looks exactly like the rest of them. It does exactly what the other ones do. It takes in water, produces whatever I want it to produce, and it has a cycle of about 1536 for tomatoes, especially because we're going to use those as our nice little target here. And if I go down here and I go to upgrade, it's going to charge me a little bit more than the greenhouse placement costs. It cost me 10,000 to place this greenhouse, and instead of placing another greenhouse for another 10,000, I can go to this one. I can upgrade to level 2 for 11, and it doubles those cycles and production costs. What that actually means is that this is going to produce, instead of 1,500 liters of, 1,500 liters of tomatoes in a month. It's actually now going to produce just over 3,300 liters of tomatoes within a month, and it costs about twice as much for the production. And if we upgrade even further, there's 3 greenhouses. And there's our 4th greenhouse. This is the power of 4 greenhouses and the cost with 1 greenhouse. This is an absolutely amazing mod. I love this mod so much because instead of giving you the option to place multiple of a single building, especially those that are on the map, this mod is perfect for maps that have exactly what you need on the map. You can go to them, buy them, and then upgrade them for a little bit more than placing another one to just have the one on the map that just does the power of multiple that you would have normally. This mod is an absolute must-have. I love this mod. I cannot tout this mod any further than I already have. I don't know if I could talk up enough. If there is ever a mod that someone asks me, what are your must-have mods for playing Farming Simulator 22? This is at the top of the list. And this mod is Upgradable Factories. It's right here, available in the Mod Hub. It is by AZ Pound 4971. I have no idea if it's how you're actually supposed to say that. I don't know if it's supposed to be like AZ number or like an automated name given to this person. I don't know, but this is actually the exact mod that I've been using. I again love this mod so much. It does absolutely everything you could possibly ask for scaling up your business. You can buy a bakery, for example, get it up to level 2. Now it is the same power as having 2 bakeries on your field. So instead of having your 2,000 bread created per month, we're actually now up to 4,000. And you can go up and up and up from there. What I've found is that around level 5 is where you have your breaking point. I usually have to scale up my arable land significantly. We're talking about tens or dozens of acres of grain coming into my grain mill. And the grain mill is able to chew through it no problem, but it's always the bakery that is your sore point, that is your point of pain. So once you get into those tier 2s, such as bread, and I'm using bread as a massive example, but this is just an example for what I'm talking about, the thought process to go through. It's the same with clothing. The tailor shop is your point of contingency. It is where everything goes into, but it just chews through it so slowly. You're only making 1,000 liters a month. When you have a maximum of 12,000 liters a year, that's where the pain sets in. You can place multiple tailoring shops on the map. Absolutely. That is 100% a way to do it, and it's actually a better way to do it than upgradable factories because it costs less. But it only costs a little bit less. That's actually why I love this mod, because it is so balanced. It gives you the option of place another building or upgrade the one you already have. Now, because level 10 is the highest you can go, the equivalent of 10 of that particular building all built into the one building. In fact, right here it just says to have a maximum level 10. The only problem with this is it does not support multiplayer, so this is kind of a single player thing. Now, if you are playing multiplayer, I do recommend playing multiple buildings. Build yourself an industrial complex. Get yourself a nice big piece of open land, build an industrial complex, and do it. Now, there are mods out there that produce significantly more. I don't personally like them because more often than not, I find that they are not realistic, I guess is the best way to put it, where we're pumping out bread literally by the hour the second it gets flour into it. That's a little bit too quick. Now, don't get me wrong, someone could in the real world do that. Now, Marita, I'm sure, does. But that's not quite what we're looking for in order to balance against the game. What we're looking at here is not really a business simulator. We're trying to balance everything against the game, and the game itself is kind of our start and our stop point. So the last thing I want to talk about is game difficulty and mods. I don't want anyone to ever tell you how to play your game. If you're playing in single player, don't think about easy, medium, hard as how hard is the game going to be. Think about them as how much do I want to grind in this game. If you don't want to grind too much, you want to make it a quick game, put it on easy. It's not that big of a problem. I promise. Do not ever let anyone tell you that you're playing the game wrong for the difficulty you're playing it on. And do not let anyone ever tell you that playing with mods is wrong or that playing without mods is wrong. Play the game however you want to. I'm here to show you how you can make more money with your farm using the equipment you have if you want to do that. I can also show you how to better equip your farm to make that happen. But I will never tell you how to play your game. Play your game how you choose to play your game, and I promise you will always have the most fun. If you want to make more money at your farm so you can play the game maybe a little bit more or improve how you play your game, I'm here to show you how to do that. But please, always play your game the way you want it to be played.
Money.
That's all. And, oh, didn't sell it quite everything. There it is. Have a good one, my guys. Cheers.